There's also like nails in the wall, holes in the wall. There's pencil marks everywhere. I'm pretty sure there's a spider web somewhere that I meant to get before I started recording, but I just remembered. Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Nitty Natty. Welcome to episode 256 of the Love in Stitches podcast. And Happy New Year! This is the first podcast of 2025, and it's been 6 weeks since I last recorded a podcast. I know we had Vlogmas, but I feel like that's a little bit of a different style, so I have lots to update you on today as far as projects go. I am in the bedroom that we're staying in at my parents' house, and I have kind of converted this corner into a little podcasting corner. Obviously, it's not much yet, but this is a big improvement from where it was just even last week. So the room that we're staying in was kind of an unused bedroom, which was used a little bit for storage. So in this corner, there was a lot of things like newspapers from back before I was born and just all kinds of stuff, that you get when you live in a house for as long as my parents have lived in this one. And so we've been working with them, and they've been working with us to help clear out some space, which has been really, really kind and generous of them. So I did get the space cleared out to record this week, but what I'm hoping to do is actually add a little bit of stuff to it. So I don't know if you can see, you probably can. There's a little bit of graffiti here. All of my siblings, I have 3 younger brothers, and I have all lived in this room at one point in time. So I have no clue who graffitied this wall. There's also like nails in the wall, holes in the wall. There's pencil marks everywhere. I'm pretty sure there's a spider web somewhere that I meant to get before I started recording, but I just remembered. Anyhow, this corner may look a little different each week as I kind of add stuff to it, sort of warm it up. I'm thinking I might get some curtains and kind of just hang them against the wall so I have like a nice little backdrop, maybe a little table for me. I don't know yet, but keep coming back and you'll see what I come up with. So I have 5 projects to update you on today, a couple of which I had started by the last podcast, most of which I worked on during Vlogmas, but I do have a couple of new ones since Vlogmas has ended, including some spinning. I also have some general updates on what you can expect from the Nitty Natty channel coming up there early this year. And then I'm going to be answering a question that I get a lot, which is, what are we doing next now that we've completed our 50 states journey? So stick around for all of that. Let's dive right into it. I have one finished object to share in this episode, and that is my Advent socks. These are the Freckled Whimsy self-striping socks. They were called, what were they called? Merry and Bright is coming to mind. I think they were called Merry and Bright. And I did get the mini skein with them, which is a nice burgundy color. So these are a really cool 24 stripe repeat, which is amazing. I don't even know how they dye up something like this. It must take so much time, but it was my first year actually trying to work a stripe per day. I did end up doing more than 1 stripe per day because I wanted to have a finished pair of socks at the end of this. So if I'm remembering right, actually, I guess I can just look. I started at the cuff, and right down here, like more than halfway through the foot, is where I finished my 24th stripe. So I did have a little bit of repeat. You can see that green and pink are also repeated up here. And that didn't bother me as far as the look of the sock at all, but I really wanted to have a finished pair by the time I got to Christmas. That was my goal. So instead of doing just 1 stripe per day, sometimes I was doing 2 stripes, sometimes I was doing more than that, sometimes I was doing 0. But all in all, it was a really doable project to work on each day of December and then have a finished pair of socks by Christmas. I did end up finishing these on December 23rd, which for me was kind of my 25th day, or it was my 25th day of working on these socks, but I recorded my Vlogmas episodes 2 days ahead of time, which worked out really nicely because my 25th day of Vlogmas, I was finishing these socks, and then I had them finished in real time on the 23rd and actually got to wear them on Christmas. I have worn these a lot already. You can probably see that there is dog hair on them. The heels are already kind of getting a little bit of pilling on them and stuff, but I can't remember if I've actually blocked them yet. I'll wash them and usually I actually have been throwing my socks into the washing machine with my clothes, but since these haven't been washed yet, I believe, I will wash them on their own, at least for the very first time. But all in all, really loving these socks. So the pattern that I did is sort of a mix of different things that I have learned over my sock making journey. So this little slip stitch pattern, it's not mine. I didn't make it up, but I also didn't get it from a pattern. I actually got it from somebody in person at a yarn store many years ago when I was living in Texas, like early on, probably in 2015 when I was living in Texas at a yarn store. And I wasn't living at a yarn store. That sounded weird. But anyway, I was sitting at the table and there was a woman there who was working up a self-striping pair of socks. She had this little slip stitch pattern going. I asked her what she was doing. She said, I'm doing knit around, and then on the next round, I knit 3 and slip 1 with the yarn and back and repeat that around. And that's it. It's a 2-row repeat. It's really easy and it's really effective and looks great with self-striping. The little part that I added to it is I find, especially when doing a short row heel, this is a fish lips kiss heel, that this area right here around your ankle, it needs to be bigger, right? It can't be quite as tight as the rest of your leg. So to combat that, there's a few things you could do. You could increase your stitches. That's great. I actually do that a lot when I do short row heels. But on this sock, I just simply changed to ribbing on the back half and kept my slip stitch pattern going on the front. So for the last more than an inch, but the last 4 stripes, I just did a 3x1 ribbing. Then I went into my heel. Once I got down to my foot, I actually decreased a few stitches just because I like my foot to be a bit tighter. I kept stockinette on the foot, kept the slip stitch pattern on the top, and there you go. That's the recipe. I do have notes on how I do this on my project page. They say pretty much the same thing, but if you're ever looking for details on how I do something, as long as it's not a paid for pattern, I try to put a lot of info in there. Okay, so that's my only finished object, I believe. Looking through these things, yeah, I think that's right. But that doesn't mean that I didn't make a lot of progress on my other projects. This one is a brand new one that you may not have seen yet if you haven't watched Vlogmas, and this is a blanket. It's a blanket that I worked on every single day throughout December, trying to make 1 square a day from an advent for my blanket, and it is called the Yorkshire Crochet Along Blanket by Mima Makes. So here is just a little taste of what this blanket looks like. This is just the pieces that I have blocked and joined together so far, but in this basket I have 24 stunning, beautiful squares, if I do say so myself. I mean, I can't take any credit because it's the yarn and the pattern. I just followed the instructions, but you can sort of see that I've got a beautiful neon rainbow. So this yarn is from a 2023 advent from Pretty Twisted Yarns. And the advent theme was a neon fade. So I opened this advent up 2 years ago and I just hadn't planned what I was going to do with it yet. And when I started looking at advent patterns, I was really attracted to this blanket. It is a super doable pattern to do the squares every single day, like 1 per day. It only took me maybe, I would say, it depended on the square because there were actually 12 different patterns. So 12 different patterns, you repeat each one twice, a total of 24 squares. Perfect for an advent. So it probably took me 2-ish hours per day, sometimes more, maybe sometimes less, but it was really fun and engaging because I was constantly learning new stuff. And I cannot say enough good things about this pattern. There was so much help in the pattern. Every single square has a full video tutorial for it, which is just incredible. It's an immense amount of work. Then now I'm joining the blanket together, and all of that also has full video tutorial, excellent instructions, lots of photos. I mean, it's just been a really, really good pattern. So during the month of December, I worked on my squares every single day. I actually started a little early. I started on November 29th, and I finished my final square on Christmas Day. So all of the squares in here are finished, but they are not blocked yet. So I've now gotten into the process of joining these squares together. So let's talk about that because I kind of have, I love my processes. I don't know what the right word is. I love making a process out of something and kind of having little goals along the way. And that's been very helpful to maintain steady progress on this blanket. I did take a little bit of a break. Like after I finished the squares on December 25th, I felt like I needed a break to like I didn't want to just keep pushing through. I needed a break for my momentum to kind of restart on this. And so I restarted it in early January, just a few days ago. Now, I did also have to find something to join the yarn together, or the squares together. And I ended up landing on Cascade Heritage. This is the color Macadamia, which is such a good color. Very perfect for what I was looking for. I wanted a neutral. I want the squares to shine, but I didn't want something dark. I know a lot of people said, well, like black would look really good or navy would look really good. And I 100% agree with you. I even think like a charcoal gray would be really cool, but that wasn't the look that I was going for. I wanted something lighter and airier, and I got exactly what I was looking for. So thank you to Haley in my membership, because we were on Zoom and we were discussing it with a whole group of people, and she was the one who suggested looking to Cascade Heritage, and then even suggested this colorway, and it is perfect. So I have 4 skeins of this. I don't know exactly if I will need all 4. I think the 4th is an extra, or maybe I'm gonna need like 3.5, but I will know soon enough. Ooh, speaking of that too, every single square, because it's a slightly different pattern, uses slightly different amounts of yarn. They all use 20 grams or less, but some use more and some use less than that. So I put on my project page how much yarn I had left over for each of my squares. So if that might be helpful information for you, that is on my project page. Okay, so let's talk about joining. I have a process. Of course I do. So the first thing I needed to do was lay out on my squares and decide on a layout. It's going to be a 4x6, 4 squares wide, 6 squares long. It's not a huge blanket, but that takes care of all 24 squares. So at first I just wanted to try to lay out the colors at random, try to spread the colors out, and I really didn't enjoy how that looked. So the next thing I tried, and this again was a suggestion from somebody, I did not come up with this on my own, but I can't recall who told me this, so I cannot give you credit, but thank you for saying this. Somebody said, why don't you try them in order, like the color progression? Because this whole blanket goes from orange, and then it's like it fades into or like changes the shades of orange into yellow, and then into green, and then into blue, and then into purple, and then finally pink. So I was like, well, let me just see what that looks like. So I laid everything out starting in one corner with the first square. Technically I think it was the second color, but I started with that color, and then I went like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like on a diagonal. 8, 9, 10, 11. And I just built it out until it reached that 4x6, and then I started bringing it back in, but always going on a diagonal like so. So I have a picture of the layout and how it is going to look, and I just fell in love with it. I think it looks so good. My only kind of thing that I wish I had done a better job of is picking which patterns go where, because what I tried to do is not have the same pattern in the same column or row, and I realized that I'm actually going to have this pattern right here, which is fine. It's not really that big of a deal, but ideally I would have spread it out more, so just more forethought in case you end up making this pattern as well. Okay, so my process now, I do have all of my squares. Like I wanted to maintain the order very carefully, and it is not easy to see the differences between these colors because they're really subtle shifts in shades. So I left all of the little tiny balls of yarn attached to the square, and I retied the tag that came on the yarn with it. So that way I know this square is December 20th, this ball of yarn is December 20th. I don't have to keep track of it in 2 places, but obviously I need to cut it in order to block it and then also join the square. So what I decided to do is I'm taking 1 row at a time, and I'm snipping off the balls of yarn, and I'm blocking those, and just having 6 squares to compare, plus I've got my photo that I can like focus on, has been doable. All of them are a different pattern. There's not as many like different shades of orange to distinguish between when I have only 6. So far that's what I'm doing, and I'm only like 1 row in. But for the remainders, I'm just putting them in little baggies with the tag, because potentially one day I'm going to make something with these yarns again, or at least somebody else will, and I want it to be organized. So if I'm not making it, I want at least it to be easy to like hand to somebody else and allow them, if they choose to put the colors in the original order. I think it could be really cute to do like a Striya cardigan or something with little tiny, basically like a neutral background and little tiny rainbow stripes. I think that would be really cute. So that's something that's kind of back of mind for maybe one day. Probably not this year. Okay, so I blocked the squares, and then I'm trying to attach them 1 square per day. I actually started one during my lunch break just a little bit ago. So here's my next one that I'm going to be adding in. So the join as you go technique, I've done several different ones. I will say I haven't done one like this before, which might actually be more of a traditional, like at least to start, where you work a few rounds around the square and then on the final round you attach it to like your other squares. I think that's a pretty typical join as you go. I've done one that I really like. It's called a continuous join as you go, where you don't have to cut your yarn between squares. So that one's really nice. But I think with this technique, you wouldn't be able to do that because you need to do several rounds around the square. And then on your third round, you're joining them together. And look how pretty this is. I think you can see it. Yeah. Just like the little, it almost kind of has a braided or cabled appearance. It's really, really cool. And I'm loving the contrast of having like some really traditional looking squares and stitches with really bright neon colors. I don't know. That's just very fun for me. And I've just enjoyed this project so much. So all of that is in the pattern. Everything, there's a border, all of that. So my goal is join 1 square per day. And then once I get through this first row, I will then need to get my next 6 squares blocked, let them dry, and then I will attach them. So ideally, I'm finishing this blanket around the end of January. I'm not super stressed about it. I just want to make continuous progress. I don't want to like stop on it. I feel like if I had stopped on it, it would be years before I could finish it. But as long as I'm making a little bit of progress each day, I'm really, really happy with this. It's still fun, it's still motivating, and I can't wait to have a cute blanket at the end of the month. On to my next exciting project, because the ones still to come are also very exciting. I've just been really enthusiastic about all of my whips lately, which has been awesome. So this is the Nordlig Cardigan by Fibertails. And the last time you saw this, again, if you were only watching the podcast, was I started the second sleeve. This sweater has a really interesting construction. You start at each of the sleeves and you work up. That's, you know, I've done at least one sweater like that before, but it was a raglan construction. This is not a raglan. After you work up in the round with the sleeves, you then start working flat to create like the front and back upper parts. It's really interesting. You'll see it when I pull this out. Then you work the front separately, the back separately, you work the band, anyway, it's so cool, and I'm gonna show it to you now, now that I've tried to explain it. It will probably make more sense, but I have done so much on this project, and I'm also loving the yarn, so I should tell you about that as well. This yarn is Ruby and Roses. It is a non-superwash yarn, and I'm actually blanking on the name of it right now. I don't know if I have a tag. Oh, I do have a tag with me. Perfect. Rosy Cheeks. That's right. It's been a while since I have shown this. So this is the color Rosy Cheeks. It's a non-superwash merino yarn. It's so fluffy. It's so soft. It's amazing, and it's working out great in this brioche. So this thing looks a little wild. There are lots of needles. Well, there's only one set of needles, but there's lots of cords in this thing right now. Let me see if I can get it into a sweater-like state. Oh yeah, okay. So for a while, it looked very, very funny. When I joined the sleeves together, so here, now you can kind of see, you start at the cuff, in the round, look how pretty brioche increases look. Okay, so that was up to the underarm, which is really a little ways out because it's kind of a drop shoulder situation. Then you work flat. Hold on. You work flat on this piece right here. So continuation of the sleeve, you work flat, you do that on both sides, and then you join them in the back, right there. Super cool. So now you basically have a shrug, like a big oversized shrug. It's connected in the back. It just has sleeves. The next thing, this is so cool, I picked up the fronts, and that's when it started to finally kind of look like a sweater. It also looked really silly because I only had one front at a time. Hold on, I gotta get up a little bit higher here. Okay, so one front, second front, right? Now, technically after the fronts, what's next in the instructions is to pick up like the button band all the way around. I do not have my buttons yet. When I started on the second front, I decided it's probably time for getting some buttons. I had debated for a little bit of changing some things about this pattern. I already picked a very different yarn from the original yarn. The original yarn has a much more rugged look. It's a little bit hairy, it's very natural, and even though I did pick a non-superwash yarn, my yarn is very smooth. My yarn is pink. My whole sweater has a totally different vibe than the original sweater, and I love them both. But my thought was maybe I'll change the finishing of my sweater too to kind of reflect the yarn that I chose. But then I decided, you know what? I think I do want buttons, but I want them to be buttons that aren't like so in your face that if I'm not using them, if I'm not closing the cardigan, they're not really super noticeable. So I ended up ordering some buttons that are clear, they're acrylic and they're clear, and they have flowers in them. I should get them in the next couple of weeks, certainly before I finish the sweater. So as soon as they arrive, I will be sharing them on the podcast, but I'm really excited about them and to see how they look next to my yarn. Hopefully they work out. I was intending to go actually to a button store, but I was like, okay, I need an idea of what I actually want. And once I started searching, I found something that was exactly what I wanted. And so I just ordered it. So yeah, those should be coming in soon. So no button band for now, I guess is the answer, or is why I was explaining that. So I went ahead and started on the back, which is just basically a wider front. It's just a long piece of straight brioche. It's very enjoyable. If you don't like brioche, you probably won't enjoy working this pattern, but I find it really rhythmic, especially in one color. It's just been very calming to work on. So after I finish the back, I will probably put this all onto some tubing and block it. I want to see how it's looking overall. The thing about this construction is that if the sizing is not right, there is not much you can do aside from take the whole thing apart because it all builds on top of each other. If my sleeves are too long, I can't just like shorten the sleeve from here. It was worked the opposite way, plus the whole shoulder, plus everything else. So I'm really hoping that everything comes out nicely. It's supposed to be oversized, so there's a lot of room for like error or a lot of wiggle room for fit, basically. As long as it actually goes on my body, it's not that big of a deal if it's a little bigger than I hoped or a little smaller than I hoped. It's still going to be a great sweater. I think for me, the only thing that I want to make sure I get right is the length on it because I want that to feel balanced and not feel disproportionate to the rest of the sweater. So that's probably why I will block it at this next stage before I proceed on to doing any ribbing or any finishing. After I do the back you go ahead and work the ribbing, and then the front you need to work the button band before you do the ribbing. So after I finish the back, there's not that much more knitting to do, and I just will be waiting on my buttons. So I am getting really dangerously close to another finished item. Of course, at the very end of a sweater, things always slow down as there's a lot of I want to take steps really slowly, like blocking before I'm totally finished to make sure I'm making the right choice. I'm not showing my Salty Days sweater today, but that was the last sweater that I'm working on completing. It's still not done yet because I'm still making tweaks to it, which is frustrating, but also I know at the end of the day, I'm going to be happy that I took so much time to get it right. How about something brand new, even new since Vlogmas? I have started a pair of pants. These are gosh, my hair keeps getting in my mouth. These are the Beachcomber Flares by Brianna Lapino, aka the Little Wolf Knits. And I've got 2 balls of yarn here that are very tangly for some reason. Hold on. Okay. So this pattern is a really cute pair of pants. It's fingering weight. It's going to have a high waist. For me, I'm going to do like a high waist and then flare bottoms. And the yarn is also by the Little Wolf Knits. This is a colorway that we actually created together. I was in her dye studio with her, picking out colors, saying, okay, no, I want a little more of this, a little more of this. So I love this color, of course, because it came from my brain with help from Brianna, making sure it wasn't just really boring, because I originally just wanted to do like the light pink background and one speckle, and she helped me kind of add more to it. This color is called Bottoms Up. It's a play on words, of course, making pant bottoms and then bottoms up, like, you know, having a glass of champagne or, you know, something like that, another drink or whatever, for the new year. So this was a colorway that was available only to her membership and my membership for this make along. So it's a very special, it's going to be a very special pair of pants, and I'm excited for it. So I have worked through over the last week or so. I started, I think, last Sunday. So it's been about a week since I cast this on, but I am working on the waistband. So the waistband is going to fold down completely. That kind of, think of like a hat with a brim that folds up that you're never going to see that other side. So this is going to fold down completely. And then just today, I flipped it, and now I'm knitting the other way, and I am going to have this be all like the inside. I don't know why I'm saying it like I have come up with this. This is what the pattern says to do. I'm just following it. So there's not much to see yet, but next week, hopefully you'll see a whole nother 5 inches, and yeah, it will be the body of the pair of pants. So when I was getting ready to make this is not my first attempt at making Beachcomber Flares. I actually cast on 2 years ago in December a pair of Beachcomber Flares, and I was going to make them out of an advent, but I decided I didn't really like how that was looking because I was making them in like wide chunky stripes, right? My color changed each day with my mini skein, and I just thought, you know, this is not something I'm going to wear even around the house, so I ended up ripping it out. I also have made a pair of shorts before. I made Brianna's Twisted Tea shorts, and I didn't trust the pattern, and I decided to not make it with negative ease, and so therefore they ended up being way too big. So I'm trying to take everything that I've learned and really make a pair of pants that fit me nicely and are comfortable, because even though the shorts that I made were way too big, they were so comfortable. I did not think knitted shorts would be comfortable at all, and they were extremely comfortable. So I took my own measurements, and then I also took the measurements of a pair of black yoga like flare pants that I have that I really like the fit of. And so I compared my measurements minus 5 or 6 inches of negative ease to what the measurements would be in the chart on the pattern. And it was like spot on. Like every single place was 5 or 6 inches of negative ease. So in my mind, that made me feel better. Like, okay, it truly is going to be okay to have negative ease. It doesn't feel like you're being constricted in your clothes, which I hate. I like my tops to be very loose. I feel like I like loose clothing everywhere, but in the case of something that is stretchy, I feel like, you know, on your bottoms, that's like a different thing. So I'm really happy with all of that. I'm going to be making kind of a custom size because my waist and hip measurements are like really different. They have like, basically when I measured myself, my waist measurement matched a size 2, I think. And this is just like the sizes in the pattern. These are not standard size 2 or anything like that. Or like, I guess what I'm trying to say, that it's not like a pants size 2. I'm not a size 2. But it was the second size in the pattern. And then my hips were the third size in the pattern. So the way that I'm going between that is I'm starting with the smaller size, and when it comes to increasing for my hips, I'm just doing more increases. That way I can go from what my size, my actual body size is on my waist, to what my actual body size is on my hips, which is just magical. I did this same thing where I kind of went in between sizes when I made a dress. It also was the Little Wolf Knits pattern, and it came out so nicely because whenever I buy anything that is like, if it's 2 pieces that come together, or if it's a 1-piece thing like a dress or a swimsuit, I always have way too much room in the top part to accommodate for the size that I am on my bottom half. Or if I try to go the other way, like if I get a dress that like looks right on me on the top half, I can't even sit down in it. So it's actually really nice to be able to create something for my body and just be like comfortable and able to do that. All of the math and measurements and things that I just talked about, I have put on my Ravelry project page, and I'm going to be updating it as I make changes to the pattern. I'm not going to write like every single thing that I did because a lot of that is in the pattern. There's actually a whole custom sizing page if you want to do that yourself. but I am gonna just kind of share like my measurements and then how I chose the size. I find that's always very helpful. Like when I see other people do that, whenever the designer says, designer's bust is a size this and they're making a size this, that helps me so much. Sometimes, as I found in the salty days, it actually contradicts the suggested ease that they are giving. And I was able to go, well, I want the fit the designer wants, so I'm going to pick that. So anyway, I just find that that's helpful when the designer shares it. So I want to share that information with you as well. All of my project pages for all of these projects have been updated. I've been doing a better job of that now that I am in a house and not moving constantly. So if there's ever anything missing from a project page that you want to see, feel free to ask me. The best way to communicate with me or get an answer to a question is always going to be email, and then I'll update it on my project page. I have two more things to share. One is another crochet project, and the last one is going to be my spinning journey. So this will be a quick one. I am making a bunch of Tulle kitchen scrubbies. This is one of my patterns. It's a free pattern, and it is something that is so functional. I use them all the time. I have been making a ton of these to give to my mother-in-law. So all this is a circle that has 3 rounds of double crochets. If you know how to crochet a circle, you don't need the pattern, just go for it. But if you would like to see my numbers, or if you would like a tutorial, I actually have a video tutorial on how to do the Tulle kitchen scrubby. I feel like this is a great first project to practice working in the round and counting your stitches and so on. So this is really great to do. It's also only 3 rounds and you get something functional out of it. So the way you make these is I get these 3-inch Tulle spools. This one I got from like a hair ribbon place. I don't really know. Anyway, I found it and I'm going to link it in the pattern. I'm updating the pattern for Ravelry, but there were 100 yards on here and I have made 8 of these so far and I still have Tulle on here. So I'm trying to figure out just how many you can get out of a 100-yard spool. I used to only be able to find the 25-yard ones, and I know you can get about 2.5 out of those. So it's much better when you don't have to join in your yarn because it's already a pain weaving in the ends on these anyway. These are tough on your hands, like when you're making them. So I try to make just one per day, but they are super, super functional. They're great at scrubbing dishes. I've replaced sponges with these essentially. So I will use it to like scrub off stuff off of my dishes, pots, and pans. And then I usually have a second one, like a clean one, that I will then put soap on and wash my dishes. It's really great, really scrubby, and awesome. So my mother-in-law, when we were visiting her in Orlando a few weeks ago, almost a month ago, she was like, I'm out. I am like on my very last scrubby. It's falling apart. Because the other thing about these is you can sanitize them, or at least clean them. I guess I can't say for sure it gets sanitized, but you can clean them by throwing them in the dishwasher. So eventually after 6 months to a year of use, they do need to be tossed, but they last for quite a long time. So she was like, can you please make me more? So that's when I ended up ordering a bunch of Tulle, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to use this to kind of like make a stock for her, make a stock for me. I gave one to my sister-in-law when we were staying with them. And then I went to Ravelry and I realized because I let my old blog URL go, the pattern is no longer accessible, even though it's a free pattern. The video is still out there, but the actual like blog post where I had written down the rows is not available anymore. So I decided I'm going to revamp it anyway. I'm going to make a new PDF and put it on Ravelry. So that is now available. If you were looking for that pattern or you just wanted a way to like have it saved easy to your phone, again, it's only 3 rows, but then you have that information really easy to find. And I also link where I found the Tulle in there. This changes probably every few years as supplies are different. Like I used to get it from Michael's and now they don't have it anymore. And sometimes I would get it at Joann's and now they don't have it anymore. So I got it from Hair Bow Center, I think. Anyway, so if you like making those scrubbies, or if that looks like something you might be interested in, or maybe something that's great to give as gifts, all of those resources, again, are free. The pattern is free on Ravelry, the video tutorial is free, and all of the information for how to make that will be there. Last project. This is a lot of projects. I promise there won't be this many every single week, but there's just so much to catch up on. So this is a spinning project. I learned to spin back in November when I was staying with Brianna, the little wolf knits, the one who wrote the Beachcomber Flares pattern, and she taught me how to spin over the course of a week. And I have a video, a vlog on how that went. It was really fun, but it was also frustrating learning something new. And so all of that is in there if you are interested in watching that one. So after I had spent a lot of, an intensive of learning to spin over the course of the week, I spun like a little bit for a couple of days after we started in the van again. And then I was like, okay, this is just like too much. I hate saying I don't have time for it, but like I just hadn't found a time of day where spinning fit into my other routine. I have a lot of routines. Obviously, we all have routines and habits that we get into of what we do every morning, what we do every lunch break, what we do in the evening. And I had that all set up for knitting and crochet where I knew where I could like find time for that in my day. But for spinning, I didn't really have that. And so because of that, and also just because of all the different transitions, moving parts and traveling, I didn't spin consistently at all, or sometimes I went like weeks without spinning. So only recently in the last week, I think since it's probably been maybe Christmas, I took time off from work from Christmas to New Year's, and I got my spinning wheel back out and actually got back into spinning during that week. And so only then have I made some progress. So I'm excited to show you what I have done. So I don't think I have all the words and knowledge yet to share with you exactly what I'm doing here, so just bear with me. And if I am incorrect about any of the spinning terms, and also with other things, if I'm not right, you always can feel free to correct me and tell me. I don't want to share the wrong thing. So if I'm incorrect with any of my spinning terms, just kindly share them in the comments. That would be really, really great, and that will help me to expand my knowledge and others too. So I have been spinning. I started out spinning this yarn. It was a partial braid, so it wasn't a full, I think it's like 3.5 ounces or 4 ounces normally. So it wasn't a full 4 ounces. Brianna gifted this to me and said, you know what, just take it and spin with it and try different things with it. So this was my first time spinning a fiber that had been dyed. Previously to that, I was just spinning undyed fiber, just testing out different kinds of wool, seeing how that felt, how they all felt very different to spin, which was surprising to me. And so this time I actually got to experiment with color. So for one of my bobbins, I broke the braid in half, and then one of the halves I broke in half again, right? So it was like, for one of them I did like a quarter and a quarter, and then I kept that other partial together and did a half. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm explaining this well enough, but it changed the way the color progressed, right? Because even though the yarn is kind of dyed, and I don't have a sample here. I have somewhere else I have another braid, but like imagine, how yarn is kind of dyed. If you see it dyed in a pan, it's kind of dyed in these like splotches. So like if you take the full width of a splotch of color and you go across, spinning that, you have a really long section of color. But when you break that, it makes it a shorter segment. So I think this was the one I did the shorter segments on, but now I really can't remember. But this is one of them that I did. I'm really proud of it. I know it's not perfectly even, but it's hand spun, so it doesn't have to be. So I'm really, really proud of that. And then my other one I'm actually almost finished with because I'm actually into the plying stages, which is great. So I did that. I finished spinning that whole braid, and then I got out some undyed yarn that Brianna gave me that I was planning to spin all of that and then ply the two together. So one that is completely bare, no color, and then one that has the different color changes to it. When I started spinning this yarn, I got really discouraged because I don't know what fiber this is, but it was probably the most challenging one to work with. My guess is that it's merino, but I don't know. So it was just very different from the other ones, and it really took me a while to feel confident in spinning it. So you can see like this is the bottom or the inside of the first one that I spun, and you can just see it's like all crazy in there. There's some parts of it that like aren't even spun. Just getting used to it was a struggle, and I kind of stopped about there on the first one. until last week. And then I like blew through spinning it. I still was, having a little bit of struggle. I was just doing, 20 minutes a day, maybe 30 minutes, kind of here and there. And then suddenly it just felt easier. And I spun up the whole second bobbin in like 2 days, the whole second half of this braid. And this one I wasn't focused on like how many times I pulled it apart because it's all white. It's all going to be the same. So I spun that up in like a matter of days and I was like, all right, I'm feeling like in my groove. And then I was like, oh no, I have to ply and I don't have anything to put my bobbins on. So then I had to get a little creative and I did this a couple of days ago over the weekend and I'm so proud of myself because I'm not really a handy person. Also, admittedly, I am not the type of person this is bad to say, but I'm not the type of person usually to be like thrifty with something, meaning that I went, oh, I need a lazy Kate for spinning. I'm going to buy a lazy Kate. And I just like went and started looking at like really nice, expensive lazy Kates. And so then I had to go, you know what? I still don't know. I'm really liking spinning. I do think I'm going to spin a lot, but I still don't know if I'm going to be 100% committed to spinning in a sense that I need a $100+ piece of equipment. I don't know if I need that yet. So let me dial it back a little bit. Let me see if there's another solution. And I remember Brianna telling me that when I get to the point of plying, I could even take like a cardboard box and stick some straight knitting needles through it and throw my bobbins on there and that would work. And so that kind of got my wheels turning. And here is what I ended up with. Hold on. I found this basket that my mom had in the house. It's like a tiny little tub. And it has holes in it already, and it's very sturdy. It's like a hard plastic. Perfect. So then I thought, well, I can just stick something through the holes and it will hold onto my bobbin and they will just roll as I'm plying together. And I didn't have anything for that. We didn't have like any dowels or anything in the garage. So I went to Home Depot and Kent came with me because I was like, I need your help. I don't know what I'm doing here. And I bought a 3-foot wooden dowel for 89 cents. And Kent stood there and he cut it into thirds for me. And I ended up with this, my very own dollar Lazy Kate. And it works great. It works so perfectly. I then ended up getting some rubber bands to put on the ends just in case it got like all the way to the side. It doesn't really do that, honestly. They kind of just stay in the middle, which is wonderful. And this has worked perfectly. And I've been plying now for 2 days. And it was just a little bit of like getting myself situated, like where is the basket going to go? Where am I going to go? Where is the spinning wheel going to go? Like all of the stuff to get it figured out. And it's been working beautifully. So if you are just getting into spinning and you're intimidated by all the costs, because there are so many costs, there's so many different things that you need. I'm now thinking, great, I've been plying and I don't have a nitty knotty. I don't have something to skein my yarn. So I'm looking around the house like going, what is big enough that I could like just wrap my yarn around for now? Do I eventually think I might get a Lazy Kate that's, beautiful and like handcrafted and something that I will definitely use that's functional, but it's also just a pretty piece? Probably, but it's not the time right now for me to get it, especially when we don't have our own house or the space. So I felt really proud of myself for resisting the temptation to buy something new and instead being crafty. And actually, what is very helpful is I can store my wheel inside here. And I think once I'm done plying, I'll just pull the dowels out and everything can fit and just sit inside this tub and I can find a space for it somewhere. And that will be very, very handy. So not only is it, a functional machine, if you will, but it's also going to be great storage. So I'm really proud of myself for that. Okay, enough of that. Let me show you what I've plied. Okay, so I am new to this. If you have any tips for me, I'm very open to them because I'm still not sure how to tell if I'm doing something correctly, but I'm having a great time and I'm really excited to finish up this yarn. So this is my first plied bobbin. It was the portion of this yarn that was a little bit of a lighter pink. So I'm really proud of this, very excited. And then here's the one I finished off yesterday. I'm trying to spend for like 20 to 30 minutes a day, including plying. So there's the one I did yesterday. I still have this, but unfortunately, I also have only a little bit of white left, and I still have stuff from my first bobbin. I packed a lot onto that first bobbin. So I know I'm not going to get through all of this with the white yarn that I have. There must have been less of that, and that's fine, or I just spun it thicker, which is also a possibility because I was struggling with it. Whatever it is, I'm going to end up with probably 3 bobbins or so. And these are really tiny bobbins, so this is not going to be much yarn, but I'm really excited to see how it turns out. I'm excited to go through this whole process by myself and really play with it and really see what happens and learn from it. I'm planning to knit with this yarn, even if it's not great, and just see what it's like. So all in all, I'm really having fun, and I'm really happy with myself, and I'm so glad that it's getting easier. You know, it's still hard, but it's getting easier. So my goal right now is just 20 or 30 minutes a day, and I know that just with time and practice, things are going to get even better. That was quite a lot of projects, so how about let's talk about something else, like Yarny news. So this is the segment I typically end my podcast with, but it's a new year, so I wanted to try something different. I'm always changing things around to try to keep them fresh for me, keep them fresh for you. So we're just moving up the Yarny news segment because I feel like it's important, and sometimes I leave important things till the end. So I wanted to bring it up a little bit. So videos. Here's what you can expect, at least for the next little while, from the Nitty Natty channel. As of right now, we're still doing 3 videos per week. So every Tuesday, you can expect a different type of video. I'm actually going to talk more about what's coming up in just a second. Every Thursday, you can expect the podcast to come up. And then on Saturdays, at least for the next 5 Saturdays, I believe, we have a yarn store tour going up at noon Eastern time. It goes up as a premiere, so if you're able to make it live, you get to join in the live chat. That's very casual. We just kind of talk about like what we're working on for the day, comment on the video, things like that. So at least for the next couple of months, that is going to be staying the same. Eventually, we're going to be finished with our yarn store tours, and then that's going to drop off, and we'll be back to 2 videos a week, which is so wild to think about. So here's what's coming up as far as yarn store tours. There's a lot of really, really good ones going on. So this next week is Green Mountain Spinnery, which is our Vermont trip. And this is a fiber mill. And so you're going to get to see how woolen spun yarn is made. We've been to a couple of different fiber mills in the past, but this one is very different, again, because they spin yarn differently. The machinery that they're using is like, some of it I think was almost 100 years old or over 100 years old. I don't know. It was a really cool experience, and I'm really excited for you to get to see that tour. After that, we are going to be going to Cleo's yarn store, which is a fairly new yarn store in Brooklyn, New York. It is a like tea coffee shop. It's kind of a yarn cafe and a yarn store, and the owner is super young, keeping things super fresh. They have a lot of really cool activities going on there, so that's another really great one to look out for. Then we are going to be going to a dyer's space, into a dye studio with Chelsea Yarns, who has Chelsea Luxe Yarns. Christina is so fun, so funny, so amazing. We're going to get to see her dye studio. We're going to get to talk to her. We're going to get to see like her yarn room space. You might have watched her Vlogmas. She's a hoot. Her husband is a hoot. So that one's going to be a great one as well. We then are going to go to South Carolina to Copious Fibers. This is a wonderful yarn shop in Irmo, South Carolina. We visited them twice, and every time it's just been really, really great. So I'm excited for that one as well. And then we're going to end with Yarn Birds in Ohio. So these are all coming out once a week on Saturday. We visited all these places. We finished up actually in November. No, is that true? I think we finished in December, actually. So it hasn't even been that long since we finished, but they're going to come out once a week. Yarn Birds is going to be our final one. This one is a yarn truck, a renovated RV that has yarn on it, plus a yarn store. So all of these are really cool. All of these are really unique. I'm so excited for you to see them. They will be going up every Saturday at noon. In case you missed it, I have already had one go out this year, the Woolly Thistle in New Hampshire. If you like woolly wools and toothy yarn, or you've been curious about it, you've been wanting to know more about like breed specific wools, you will definitely enjoy that yarn store tour. Corrine is from Scotland. She's had this yarn store as a brick and mortar only since July, but the Woolly Thistle has been an online shop for years, and they have so many yarns from Europe, mostly from Europe, I guess. I was gonna go into different things. I guess I was gonna say from the UK, from like the Nordic region, from different parts of Europe, but also yarns that are made and like sheep that are raised and yarns that are made and milled here in the US. So it's a really, really cool perspective on different types of yarn that you may not have seen before. So all of that can be found in my yarn store playlist. We also have a yarn store map on nittynetty.com that has a map of the US, so you can kind of scroll around different states. And if you see a pink yarn ball, that means we've filmed a yarn store tour, and you can click on it and go straight to that video. So it might be helpful if you're traveling or if you move, you're looking for yarn stores near you. Okay, Tuesday videos. I'm so excited for this. My theme for January and February is getting organized and making a plan. I am so passionate about organization. I'm so passionate about knitting and crochet. Putting these together is like the epitome of life for me. I love doing it so much, and it has been stressing me out to no end to not be able to do this for the last year. Could I have done it? Maybe, but I just did not have the mental capacity to do it or the space. So now that we are going to be stationary for a little while, and again, I'm going to talk about our plans coming up in the last segment, I am ready finally to tackle my stash, my lingering projects. I have a blanket that needs to be loved on. I have 2 blankets actually that need to be loved on. I have so much stuff to go through, to organize, to let go of, to sort, to put away, to plan. It's all going to be coming up very, very soon. I also have some video themes that I'm excited to do and share, just more in the like helpful kind of content. So these are not in any particular order. I haven't decided when these are going to come out yet, but I'm going to be doing a video on planners. I have 4 different like project planners that I'm going to be going through and sharing. I want to do one on yarn budgeting, because that's something that I also really love to do. Is like, personally, I love to create a budget, and so I thought that might be a helpful topic. Of course, sorting and organizing my stash, making plans for the year, figuring out my blanket, my travel blanket. I have so many things coming up. So that's going to take place for the better part of January and February. That's what I've got so far. Okay. As far as events go, I just wanted to remind everyone that I do have a resource on nittynetty.com for Yarny events. These are not my personal events, but just events taking place around the world. I do want to have events from everywhere on here. So even if you're not in the US, it's totally fine to send in an event and I will add it to our list. I don't have anything for January right now. We started this about maybe, I don't know, it wasn't quite halfway into the year last year, but what I was doing last year is I was adding them to this list and then I was removing them because I was sharing them in the podcast. Once the list got just way too long, I actually created a page on my website, and I can't remember exactly when that happened. It might have been halfway through the year. So essentially from like August on, I think, or July on, I have everything that happened last year still on that page. So it's a great resource to go and like click into an event's website and see if they've set a date for next year. As the year goes on, I will be updating it more. I actually have some help to get that done, so I'm really grateful for that. But I will be updating it and like adding in new dates, updating things, removing things if needed. But for right now, you can see all of the current events that are coming up around the world that are yarn related and anything that happened last year as well. If you do have an event that you want to send to me, please send it to me via email. My email is nittynatty@gmail.com. And if you can include a website link and the dates of the event, that would be super helpful for me getting it up really, really quickly. We have made it to the highlights section, where I'm just going to share a few things that have been going on since I last podcasted. Of course, This is going to be a little bit of a longer segment than usual since it's been so much time, but most weeks I don't have that much going on, especially not anymore since we're not going to be traveling for a while, and I have that update in here for you too. So since the last podcast, I recorded that on November 25th. It has been 6 weeks. We have done a lot of different things. We've also relaxed a lot, which has been wonderful. But the last podcast I recorded in Orlando, Florida at my mother-in-law's. So you may have seen that. And then we also started our Vlogmas in Orlando, Florida. But since then, if you haven't been watching the podcast or keeping up with Vlogmas, there's a lot of gaps to fill in. So I'm here to fill all those things in. At the end of November, we drove our van down to my mother-in-law's in Orlando, Florida. We got to spend 10 days with her, which was just spectacular. This was over Thanksgiving. It was also her birthday. I gifted her a pair of hand-knit socks. I'm making her, those Scrubbies. They're going to be kind of a Christmas gift. I don't know. I guess they're just going to be something she needs. But that was really, really wonderful. Right after that, we went to South Carolina for a couple of days. That's where we filmed at Copious Fibers. And that was actually our final yarn store tour to film for our 50 States project. So starting in August of 2023, we set out on a journey to film at one yarn store in all 50 states. This morphed into something a little bit different from that, but we still struck pretty true to like what we had planned. So we did film at something yarn related in all 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska and Hawaii, by the way, are already on the channel. 44 of those are already on the channel, but we sort of branched away from just doing yarn stores. There are mostly yarn stores on there, but we also opened ourselves up to going to fiber mills, to going to yarn dyers, to going to like alpaca farms. We did a few different things, and this was all really fun. And then in a few states, we did more than one thing. So like we went to 2 yarn stores in Alaska because we don't know when we're going back to Alaska. We did a couple of stores in Texas. We used to live in Texas. We have a lot of people that we love there. So that was kind of an easy one to do. We also did a few fiber festivals along the way that take place in different states. We did some yarn crawls, like in California, we did the Bay Area yarn crawl and we went to 20 yarn stores in 4 days. That was insane. So we ended up going to more than 50 yarn stores, and there's more than 50 videos. However, our final state that we needed to film something in was South Carolina, and we did that at the very beginning of December. So that one hasn't come out yet, but it will be coming out soon. So then we came back to my parents here in Nashville, Tennessee. That is where I'm located currently, before heading to New Orleans with my siblings. I have 3 younger brothers. They all have serious partners. And so we like to do a trip. We started this tradition last year. We all went to Disney World together. It was really fun. We decided to go to New Orleans this year. We had a long weekend there. It was wonderful. And I don't know, we just had a really great time. And then we came back to Tennessee, and we have been here, we have been here for 3 weeks now. I think this is the longest time I've been in one place for a year and a half. I think that's true. Yeah, crazy. That might not be totally true because we might have stayed at my parents' for longer than 3 weeks, but I don't know. I really don't know. I'd have to look back at my calendar for that. We are here for the foreseeable future. We do have a plan for this year. I am going to share that. We are going to be doing some traveling, but at least for the foreseeable future, we are here in Tennessee. So there's not going to be that many exciting life things happening. Hopefully a lot more knitting and crochet exciting things happening, but not a lot of adventures, at least right now. Those are all, we're resting from all of that stuff. We had the absolute best Christmas and New Year's, probably one of the best I've had in a really long time. Not because the others were not good, but because it was something I really needed. I needed time to just be in one space. I needed time to rest. I took time off from creating videos and doing admin stuff. And I just was like, I'm just not going to work for like a week. And it was really wonderful. I vegged a lot. I slept a lot. I binged a lot of shows on YouTube. I did a lot of knitting and crochet. I mean, it was just a really good time. Right now, kind of coming back into things, this is like my first like full week seriously back into work. I worked a little bit last week, but I don't feel that like anxious feeling that comes with going back to work. And even though this is a job that I love so, so much, I do feel that sometimes like going, okay, there's so much to get done. Can I do it all? Like, oh my gosh, I don't know. It's just like that kind of Sunday scaries feeling. And I was reflecting on that today where like I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way at all. I think it's because I am very rested and ready to come back to things. But I also think just the last year and a half of traveling has just shaped us in so many ways where we were ready to do something every single day and we didn't always know what that day was going to look like. And having adapted to that, like having just a Monday through Friday sort of work routine, I'm like, yeah, we're going to get it all done. It's going to be totally fine. Everything is going to be great. If it doesn't go perfectly to plan, I can adapt. I mean, it's just kind of changed my outlook and my perspective, and I feel really, really good. I am really excited to keep resting and keep being in one place and kind of like hone in on other parts of my life that have kind of been put on the back burner since we were traveling and doing so much, and focusing on that. So I'm not like ready to get back into the van anytime soon. I think Kent feels the same way. We have put 50,000 plus miles on our van, and Kent has done like 49.99999 of those. Like I barely drove at all. So it has been a lot for the last year and a half. That's not to say I'm not grateful. We had a spectacular time, but it's just we're in a really good spot where like resting is what we need to do. And I'm really grateful to my parents for creating the space for us here and allowing us to do that for as long as we need without having to go, we don't have anyone to stay with where we'd have to make a decision about what we're doing next and like get an apartment or live in the van and have those be our only two choices. I realize that we're really lucky that we have this in between space to be in. So what comes next? So this is a question we've been getting a lot, and I have a pretty solid answer, a pretty predictable what we're going to be doing next. Doesn't start for a little while, but this is what the plan is, at least right now. And honestly, it's always subject to change, but this is what we're thinking. So originally, when we were planning our 50 states journey, we bought a van. We were going to live in the van for a year. That was our original plan. We were going to make it to 50 states in a year. I'm glad we didn't do that because that would have been insane. But our plan was travel for a year, go to all 50 states, sell the van, go back to like normal life, like find an apartment, find a house, settle down somewhere. That was kind of what we thought would happen. Our trip ended up taking just a little over a year, about a year and 3 months, I think, from August 2023 to early December 2024. So yeah, a year and 3, 4 months, something like that. And so that was all fine. It took a little longer than we thought. But also at the end of it, we didn't really feel like we were done traveling. Like we knew we needed a break. Again, we're not ready to get back into the van right now, but we felt like we weren't done, that this chapter was not over yet. We just needed a little time and then we could get back into it. There are so many places that we still want to go. Traveling to all 50 states that fast meant that we saw a lot of things, but we didn't like really get to experience each state in its fullest. We didn't get to see everything that a state has to offer. There are some states like Minnesota, I'm so sorry, we were there for less than 24 hours, and that is just not okay. Like we want to go back. There's so many things we want to still visit. There's so many things we still want to see. And so our plan right now is that we are going to recharge for the next 4 months. So we're going to be here at my parents' through the end of April. And starting in May, we're going to head out in our van to Maryland Sheep and Wool. We're going to be going to that festival in Maryland. And then we are going to take off for like another short-term adventure. Maybe 3, 4 months, kind of like through the summer in the warmer weather. It's not a good time to travel right now anyway. So from Maryland, we're going to make our way again, I think, all the way back across the country. We have a couple of spots that we really want to hit. There's 3 national parks in the contiguous United States that we have still not been to yet, so we want to go to those. And then we're thinking about making part of that trip through Canada. Canada is a country that I have not explored. It's so close. We have a van, we can go through it. Like, there's a lot of places that I want to see, a lot of cities I want to go to, a lot of people I want to meet. So I'm hoping that we can make that happen. I think for Kent, ooh, never mind. I was going to say that would be great for him to go to a bunch of hockey games, but it is not going to be hockey season. So that will be really sad. Sorry, Kent. Um, but we're thinking we're going to make at least part of that trip through Canada, which is really exciting. Again, subject to change. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, but that's like the semi plan. This trip would essentially end probably in Seattle at Flock in August of this coming year. So that's kind of the loose plan for now. Like, that's it. Like, that's all we have. That's all I know. I don't know any more details other than that. That's kind of what we've laid out. So as Kent and I keep talking and thinking about things, we'll kind of put more puzzle pieces into place. But as of right now, that's the plan. We will travel throughout the summer in our van. And then after that, we will be seriously, or probably during that, we will be seriously considering where we want to live. So we don't know the answer to that right now. It's actually looking like we might move somewhere for a short term after this, just because I think that's just what we like to do right now. We just like to explore new places. So it may not be where we're going to end up forever, but yeah, that's sort of our loose plan. I'm really excited for this next trip because it's going to be a much slower pace. We're going to have 4 months just to like make our way, stopping in places, doing the things like, when we were trying to get to all 50 states, we had to be really intentional with our route to make sure that we were, getting to each of the states and getting to like the different cities and capitals and parks and yarn stores in those states. But now we don't have that sort of layout that we have to go through. We can kind of just go from whatever point we want to whatever the next point is we want to, without having to make sure we don't miss anything in between. And I think that's going to be really cool. I think it's going to be a slower pace that's going to make this feel like a totally different trip. And it's also not our first time going out and doing this, and it's going to be different. It's going to be really different. Yeah, I'm pretty excited for it. Thanks for sticking around for this super long episode. It's really good to be back recording podcasts, back into project planning, and doing all of those things. I have so much fresh and renewed energy for this new year, and I'm excited to share that journey with you. Make sure to check out the Woolly Thistle Yarn Store tour if you haven't already, especially if you're interested in seeing all of those amazing, toothy, gorgeous European yarns. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.